This case unfolds in New South Wales in October of 1997. In a small rural town located in New South Wales, two best friends set off walking. Their goal was to attend a party, although they never made it there. Panic quickly spread, and what followed was an investigation that has forever haunted the small town of Bega. Lauren Berry was a 14-year-old student enrolled at Bega High School. She was known as an incredibly happy and adventurous young girl, someone who had a strong passion for the outdoors. She had a good circle of friends, and one of those friends was 16-year-old Nichole Collins, a creative teenager who loved her family very much. Together they enjoyed camping and attending various social events. Over the past few months, these two friends had been especially enjoying camping, and on the 4th and 6th of October, 1997, there was a long weekend in New South Wales due to a public holiday known as Labor Day. For the occasion, the two girls, along with other boys and girls, planned a camping trip, something they had done numerous times before. Their parents agreed they could go, and so on the 3rd of October, Nichole's father set up a temporary campsite just off the Bega-Tathra Road. The campsite was only 3 kilometers away from where Lauren Berry and Nichole Collins lived. It was an ideal spot, as their parents could easily check in on them when needed. School was out, and this was meant to be a fun trip for the long weekend. From all accounts, the two girls were having a wonderful time with their friends. However, many of the others were in relationships, leaving the two girls feeling a bit left out. Nichole had only recently separated from her boyfriend and was now single. Being surrounded by couples made her feel a little sad, and she began to miss him deeply, wishing to reconcile. Nichole's ex-boyfriend was not at the camping trip. Instead, he was attending a party not far away, and an idea formed in their minds. Why not go to the party and see if Nichole could win him back? As night fell, the campsite became so remote that it was extremely dark. Eventually, the temptation to go to the party grew stronger. So at around 9 p.m. on Sunday, the 6th of October, Lauren and Nichole left their friends at the campsite and headed down the track to the Bega-Tathra Road, bound for the party. They said goodbye to some of their friends before heading out, bringing a bottle of alcohol along with them. Just 10 minutes later, Nichole's brother arrived at the campsite in his car to visit some friends. He had just narrowly missed seeing his sister and her friend. Had he seen them, he would have given them a lift to the party in his vehicle. The walk to the party was quite a long distance. Many of their friends believed that the two would give up midway and probably just stay over at Nichole's house, expecting to see them the next morning. But Nichole and Lauren never reached the party, nor did they make it back home. The next morning, those still at the campsite began to wonder where they were. They hadn't been seen by anyone at the party, and friends and family had no idea where the two girls could possibly be. Had they gotten lost? Unlikely. They knew the area like the back of their hand. Did they decide to go somewhere else willingly? Again, not likely. They would have found a way to inform their parents where they were. As more time passed, it became obvious that something was terribly wrong. A search was immediately launched. Major efforts were made to locate the girls, hoping that they were simply lost out in the bushland, but there was no sign of them anywhere. Panic quickly spread among the community as police officers took control. Every inch of the area was searched. Days went by, and still there was no trace of the girls. Then came a discovery. An item of Lauren's clothing was found discarded by the side of an old road. It was Lauren's shirt, the same one she had been wearing the last time she was seen at the campsite, but something unusual was noticed. A seminal stain on the shirt. This was no longer a simple missing persons case. It had become something far more disturbing. An investigative team was assigned as the police feared the worst. Various neighboring states were alerted about the missing girls, and a task force was assembled to question anyone who might be involved in their disappearance. Several suspects were interrogated, but all were quickly released after providing solid alibis. More and more potential suspects were crossed off the list. The parents turned to the media, hoping for any new leads, but no useful information surfaced. The only real clue that emerged was a large pink television set that had been dumped by a rural roadside and then mysteriously disappeared. Surprisingly, this lead regarding the pink TV would turn out to be far more crucial than originally thought. Then, a detective received a phone call from a police station in a nearby town close to Canberra called Yass. This detective answered the phone and spoke with another detective who had been following the case of the missing girls. The detective explained that roughly 3 weeks after the girls disappeared, a stolen car had been searched by police in Canberra. Inside, they found maps of the Bega area. The individuals who had stolen the car were arrested for the offense. He provided the names of the 2 men in custody, Leslie Camilleri and Lindsay Beckett. Leslie was a 27-year-old career criminal with a long history of violent offenses and a dominant personality. Lindsay Beckett was 23 years old and originally from New Zealand. He also had a criminal background but was described as easily influenced and having a low IQ. He essentially followed whatever Camilleri told him to do. Between the 2 of them, they had accumulated over 220 criminal convictions, some of which were extremely serious. These 2 men were very, very well known to law enforcement. The task force decided to bring Lindsay Beckett in for questioning. Every potential suspect needed to be ruled out, as time was critical. Lindsay was interviewed by the police. He stated that on the night the girls vanished, he and his friend Camilleri attended a music festival and then visited Yass and Canberra, and that he knew nothing about the girls beyond what he had read in the newspapers. One detective then decided to try something. He brought up the pink TV, asking Beckett if he knew anything about it. Up until then, Lindsay Beckett had remained calm, treating the interview almost like a casual conversation with the officers. But once the pink TV was mentioned, he noticeably changed. The detective saw that he suddenly appeared much more nervous than he had just moments before, almost like he realized the police were closing in on him. The detective suspected that the TV might be a crucial part of the case. With no solid evidence, Beckett was allowed to leave, but he was far from cleared. Investigators began digging into the pink TV lead. There were several undercover informants working in the area, and since the 2 men were involved in drug dealing, investigators tasked the informants with gathering information, and they uncovered something intriguing. The 2 men had carried out a drug deal, and part of the payment involved a television. Leslie Camilleri was then called in for questioning. He was already in custody on a number of theft charges he had accumulated. He was considered the smarter of the 2. The police quickly learned that Beckett was essentially Camilleri's strange little follower who would obey whatever he was told. During interrogation, Leslie told the same story as Lindsay, claiming he had no idea about the 2 missing girls, but that he had read about it in the newspapers. But then they hit him with a question about the pink TV and asked if he had been driving with one when the girls disappeared. At this, Camilleri looked like a rabbit caught in headlights. He panicked. He then refused to speak to the police any further, and he was taken back to his jail cell. This was it. Investigators believed they had their culprit. With Camilleri no longer talking, the investigators continued their investigation, but while they were still at the station, they received a phone call. The call was from the jail where Leslie Camilleri was being held. They informed the investigators that Leslie Camilleri was in his cell having a complete breakdown. He was hitting his head against the wall and kept muttering something about a television. Having completely broken Camilleri, investigators brought the less intelligent of the pair back in. Beckett, one of the detectives, carried with him a photograph of the missing girl. He showed it to Beckett, and he couldn't even bring himself to look at the photo. He too had cracked. He then told the investigators a horrifying sentence, "I'll show you where we hid the bodies." He agreed to drive with the investigators and take them to the exact spot where the 2 men had killed Lauren and Nichole, along with where the murder weapons were too. The bodies of Lauren Berry and Nichole Collins were found in a remote area of bushland near Fiddler Green Creek, which is on the border of New South Wales and Victoria. The location was hundreds of kilometers from where they were last seen. The bodies of Lauren and Nichole were taken away to a forensic lab for an autopsy. Both men were arrested and charged with the murder. Beckett confessed fully, but Camilleri denied any responsibility and tried to downplay his role, putting all the blame on Lindsay Beckett. Investigators were able to piece together what happened that night. The girls left their friends at the campsite at 9 p.m. They walked down the dirt track on the Bega-Tathra Road on their way to the party. The timing of what happened next is chilling. Leslie Camilleri was driving along that road with Beckett. As the girls emerged onto the road, they were spotted. If the girls had spent 1 or 2 minutes longer talking to their friends, none of this would have ever happened. The 2 men pulled up and spoke to the 2 girls. One theory is that the girls got into the car of their own choice under the promise of going to a concert in Bega. The other theory is that the men forced them both into the car, but there wasn't enough space, as the two men had with them the pink television set. So they discarded the TV on the side of the road and got the girls inside. Once inside the car, the two men each produced knives. Camilleri was driving, and he told Beckett to kill the girls if they tried to escape. They drove to a road not far from the girls' homes. It was at this point that Beckett forced himself upon Lauren. Camilleri was also forcing himself upon Nichole. She was wearing her high school jacket, the piece of clothing that would later be found with a stain on it. Once they were done, the car drove off again, heading in the direction of Marambol, with Camilleri still driving. They passed through the town and headed towards Zeeton. On the way, the men injected themselves with illegal substances. Before reaching Eden, they stopped off at a national park because Camilleri wanted to force himself upon Lauren again, and Beckett forced himself upon Nichole. A small black rubber torch and a tampon were found in the national park. Lauren owned an identical torch, and the girls had it with them when they disappeared. After this, Camilleri told Beckett to drive. During the course of this journey, the men stopped off multiple times to do unspeakable things to the girls. Beckett continued to drive as Camilleri fell asleep, showing how unfazed he was at what they were doing. When he awoke, he told Beckett that they should go to Sydney so they could throw the girls off a bridge. Around this time he repeatedly said they cannot go back. One of the girls asked if they were going to be killed, and Camilleri replied that they were going to be tied up so they could escape from the scene, assuring the girls that they would not be killed. But then they turned off the highway over Fiddler's Creek. They then tied up the girls' hands with rope. The girls asked again if they were going to be killed, but the men repeated what they had originally said, that they were going to be tied up so they could get away and not be caught. They then led the girls through a dense bush for around 100 to 200 meters and eventually arrived at the creek. In a place far removed and desolate, no sound would reach another soul. By the stream, Camilleri instructed Nichole to cleanse herself in the water to erase any trace of DNA. Lauren received the same command. Then, Camilleri forced both girls to lie face down. He crafted gags by slicing strips from Lauren's jeans. Both Lauren and Nichole were silenced with these. Using rope, Camilleri bound Lauren's legs, pulling them back to her hands, which were tied behind her, with a rope encircling her neck and mouth. Nichole was then secured to a tree. Next, Camilleri pulled Beckett aside, ordering him to drown Lauren in the stream and then kill Nichole at the tree. Beckett, according to his account, resisted, but Camilleri threatened to kill him if he refused. Camilleri insisted and then returned to the car, expecting Beckett to comply, which he did. Beckett dragged Lauren into the water by the ropes, attempting to drown her. She fought back, splashing water on his knee, soaking him. Infuriated, Beckett drew his knife and stabbed her in the neck. Nichole witnessed it all, seeing her best friend perish. As Lauren lay still, Beckett rushed to Nichole, who said to him, "You're going to kill me, aren't you?" He told her to be quiet and slashed her throat 3 times. He kicked her repeatedly, pinning her down with his foot as she bled. Then, he stabbed her chest. Once Nichole was dead, he collected the ropes and gags and returned to the car, blood-soaked. Camilleri asked, "Did you do it?" Beckett confirmed he had. Camilleri kept pressing, "Did you see the demon?" The meaning of this was unclear. Camilleri then drove off. They headed to Canberra, where they incinerated their clothes, ropes, and gags after purchasing new outfits at a mall. At Lake Ballygriffin in Canberra, they tossed their 2 knives out of the car window into separate parts of the lake. One of those knives was later retrieved by authorities. They then returned to Yass, where the 2 men resided. They brought Camilleri's car to a car wash, spending 6 hours or more scrubbing it meticulously, and later attempted to recover the pink TV, but by the time they arrived, a young couple had claimed it, unaware of the grim reasons it was abandoned roadside. The couple later came forward, and the TV was turned over to the police. Through sharp investigative work, they discovered the TV was sold to someone at a second-hand store and then given to the DU killers as payment. The serial number on the television matched records tying it to the culprits, adding more evidence connecting them to the crime. After this, the girls were reported missing, and weeks later, the 2 men were apprehended, with Beckett confessing. Following the discovery of the bodies and Beckett's confession, they pressed Camilleri for a similar admission, However, he insisted he had no part in the murders, claiming he was only in the car and did nothing malicious to the girls. He alleged Beckett had dosed him with various illegal drugs, causing him to fall asleep. He claimed that when he woke, Beckett was driving on the road between Bega and the beach. He said Beckett stopped and spoke to two girls who climbed into the back seat. After Beckett removed the television and left it roadside, Camilleri claimed he blacked out again, and upon regaining consciousness, he saw Beckett bloodied. However, the police found this unbelievable. For context, Camilleri was clearly the dominant one, to the extent that when Beckett stayed at his place, Camilleri forced him to sleep outside like an animal. Beckett was someone who obeyed orders, capable of evil himself, but always followed his leader's directives. The police understood this but needed more evidence, which they had. As mentioned earlier, a jacket belonging to one of the girls was found, bearing a semen stain. This jacket was tested for DNA, and the results matched Camilleri. This was damning. He had blatantly lied about being asleep. Then a woman came forward. Weeks before the murders, the two men had picked up a woman in Canberra. They assaulted her in the same way they had attacked Lauren and Nichole, taking her down similar secluded paths. Fortunately, she escaped after they allowed her to use the bathroom behind a tree. She reached safety and got help as the men sped off. They had picked her up off a road, coerced her into the back seat, assaulted her, and planned to kill her when finished, just as they had with Lauren and Nichole. These two men clearly had a pattern, proving Camilleri was not as innocent as he claimed. With the stained jacket, the woman's testimony, and Beckett's confession, the prosecution had their case. The trial would soon start. Family and friends had to endure hearing the agonizing details of the horrors the two girls endured that night. On the 26th of June, 1998, Lindsay Beckett stood in the Supreme Court of Victoria. Mercifully, he admitted guilt for the murders of Lauren Barry and Nichole Collins. He received a life sentence with a 35-year non-parole period. At the time, this was the longest non-parole term ever set in Victoria. Camilleri faced court in February 1999, pleading not guilty. The prosecution summoned 70 witnesses, presenting DNA evidence, forensic results, Beckett's testimony, and the woman from Canberra's account. The evidence was overwhelming. The trial ended on the 10th of April, 1999. He was convicted. Camilleri was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole, a just but rare penalty in Australia. Yet, tragically, the story doesn't conclude here. In 2012, Camilleri admitted to murdering another woman. Prudence Bird was a 13-year-old girl from Victoria. Born on the 26th of March, 1978, she was a typical teen, close to her family, and loved life. But on the 2nd of February, 1992, she vanished from her home inexplicably. Last seen at home, she left an uneaten meal and the TV on. Her disappearance was unsolved for 20 years until Leslie Camilleri confessed to her murder in 2012. His account contains several inconsistencies, possibly due to the passage of time or others' involvement. Heartbreakingly, Prudence's body remains unfound. For this crime, he was convicted and received an additional 28 years added to his life sentence. Camilleri will never walk free, but Beckett might. He becomes eligible for parole in 2033 at age 59.